Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mulugeta Gebrehiwot Berhe, and greetings from Mekelle, Tigray. I am grateful to the organizers of the Tigray event for organizing it and also inviting me to the panel. Indeed, the Tigray case deserves such an attention, among other things. The concept note for the panel gave me a wide latitude in choosing my talking points, and I opted to talk on some points on the narrative of the war in Tigray and the lessons the Tigrayans should take from it. I thank the organizers again for giving me the chance and the audience for listening to my talks in advance. I begin my talk with trying to answer on how and why did we arrive here as Tigrayans. The war in Tigray has tested the very existence of its people. We Tigrayans have faced a campaign of extermination through massacre, expulsion, rape, and starvation. Many have perished, many more are suffering, and we all are traumatized. As a people, our existence is still at stake. Some parts of Tigray are still under the occupation of foreign forces and their Ethiopian allies. Any land and air transportation to Tigray and out of Tigray is closed. Tigray is completely cut off the national electric grid system, and there is no telephone and internet connection in Tigray. Shortage of food and medicine is killing thousands every week, as the Ethiopian government and its Eritrean ally have successfully blockaded any passage for humanitarian aid. The whole world is watching the genocide in Tigray, with little effort to stop it. It was visible for us, Tigrayans, the development of a hostile attitude against us following the ascent of Abiy Ahmed to power. Abiy's massive and coordinated media campaign against Tigrayans in a year's time already began to bear fruits by evicting tens of thousands of Tigrayans from all corners of Ethiopia, ransacking their property. The road connecting Tigray to the center of the country via the Amhara region was blocked for over a year, leading to the beginning of the war. Abiy Ahmed's rapprochement to Eritrea was already clear that it had hostile anti-Tigrayan motivations. Hostilities from Asmara to Tigray continued while senior security officers of both countries frequented back and forth travels to both capitals, along with frequent joint visits to Ababa and Gondar for undisclosed purposes. The ruling elites of Tigray knew that some sort of military confrontation was coming, but they never thought that this would be in the scale they faced. The time they learned about the full preparation and plan of the intended military attack was too late for them to prepare for it. It was obvious that a long and devastating war was coming, and the rulers of Tigray were only reacting to developments rather than engaging for a longer preparation. For example, a few weeks to the offensive, the Univ decided to dissect the Northern Command into two commands for effective coordination of the attack with the Eritreans. It also decided to replace the leadership of the Northern Command by officers familiar to the plan for the Tigray war. The regional government had to stop them, citing the violations of the procedures of the army for such bigger decisions after learning of the details of the plan for the attack. A week to the start of the war, Tigray learned that most of the army of the Southern Command began mobilizing to directions of Southern Tigray via the Amhara region, and most of the forces of the Eastern Command began mobilizing to the eastern side of Tigray via the Afar region. In a similar tone, the Eritrean Defense Forces called on its reservists, their units, and massively mobilized its army divisions to the borders of Eritrea to Tigray, waiting for the hour for the attack to begin. Tigray decided for a preemptive operation on the Northern Command, a day before the beginning of the concerted military campaign. The actions on Northern Command was a mixture of political and military actions. Several officers, knowing the plot against Tigray and considering the acts of the federal government as treason on national interest, automatically changed sides without fighting and convinced several army units to simply cooperate with the government of Tigray. Some who were part of the covert planning resisted surrender and decided to fight, thus calling for limited military action. The action on the Northern Command, over and above weakening the capacity of the regime, particularly its mechanized capacity, helped delay the speed and immediate impact of the planned military attack. Furthermore, it enabled Tigray to have access to arms, which had a serious impact on the amount of casualties it inflicted on the force of aggression. Despite this, however, the Tigrayans were overwhelmed by the joint campaign of the coalition of forces that were mobilized at their full capacity. The whole army of the ANDF was mobilized to the war. The Amhara regional state mobilized its special force, Polish force, that was over 20,000 strong to the war, along with an assortment of special forces and militias from the other regional states of Ethiopia. 38 of the 45 divisions of the Eritrean Defense Forces mobilized to the war in the first weeks and later mobilized in full to the war. Most devastating was the deployment of the armored unmanned aerial vehicles or drones of the United Arab Emirates alongside the Ethiopian Air Force, targeting command control and firepower of the TDF with reasonably effective results. This development forces the TDF to focus on protecting its core force and work towards a full preparation for a full war. The peasants of Tigray, who observed the intent of the military campaign as manifested in its indiscriminate attacks on civilian lives and properties, began positively responding to the calls of their government for mobilization. They knew that the threat was an existential one. The force of aggression took their produce and their animals and burned and killed whatever they could. The joint forces ransacked whatever public and private social and economic infrastructure and dismantled their food security system. They raped their mothers, wives, and daughters, often in front of them and accompanied by humiliating insults. In response to these actions, the whole people of Tigray turned every corner of Tigray into a point of resistance. TDF, in a very short period of time, built an army, rebooted its armed struggle military strategies and tactics, and defeated its enemies and liberated most of Tigray in one of the most astounding feats of arms in history. In a matter of 8 months, the ANDF lost most of its divisions and armament to the TDF and left the capital of Tigray, Mekelle, in a hasty retreat. The TDF followed and crushed most of them, the remaining in the Amhara and Afar areas proximate to the Tigray region. The ANDF lost the war in June. Rather than recognizing the iron logic of the battlefield and seeking to negotiate, Abiy chose to fight on. With or without any external support, we are sure that this atrocious war will be left behind, like all other similar wars. But the war thus far has left the Tigrayans with huge lessons. Their survival will, number one, their survival will only come out of their struggle and resistance, and will absolutely owe nothing to the international community, as it all collectively and individually failed to stop the genocidal war in Tigray. 2, until all of them, including the UN Security Council and the EU Peace and Security Council, begin to reckon with their moral failures over Tigray, they will have little leverage over what the Tigrayan people decide to do. There is a chance for these international organizations to begin reckoning with themselves by forcing the government to immediately open access for humanitarian operations and the resumption of essential services. These are not issues for negotiation, as they are simply crimes against humanity. The international community can also do enough to the removal of Eritrean forces from Tigray and the return of the borders of Tigray as they existed prior to the outbreak of the war. Tigray will want to negotiate for a comprehensive ceasefire and a final political settlement. Its experience has now shown it that it should have a referendum under which its final status as an independent state or as a member of the Ethiopian Federation is to be determined. Up until the modalities and institutions for such an internationally recognized referendum is in place, it will look into a transitional government arrangement whereby it is allowed to retain its security forces up until the political fate of Tigray is determined by a referendum, whereby all forms of crimes are investigated by an independent body and justice to be served to the victims and the perpetrators to be tried in an internationally accepted standard, whereby Tigray is allowed access for international assistance, access in a direct way. But the situation also poses some long-term lessons for Tigray. following the developments it led to the war. Whether as an independent state or as an integral part of Ethiopia, Tigray from now on wants to see a democracy with the following qualities. It wants to build independent state institutions and wants to end the current fusion of the ruling party with the state that has denied the autonomy of the state. It wants a political opening whereby freedom of expression and organization is fully practiced and the necessary institutions for such a practice are in place. It wants its governance system to depart from a culture of wartime leadership that did cost it a lot thus far. On the international front, the Tigrayans should prepare to work for genuine multilateralism, which is a weapon of the weak. In the advent of a multipolar world, the Tigrayans should be considering for a new non-allied movement fighting for genuine multilateralism along with other nations. This brings me to the end of my talk. The war in Tigray should end soon, or the world is going to witness massive atrocities in an ever-witnessed levels as a result of the bloody war and the man-made famine. The Tigrayans at this particular time, while prioritizing all their efforts to end the war, should also begin thinking of taking lessons and preparing for the future. If they fail to do this, they will face the end of the war unprepared and might fail to bring a lasting solution to their problems. I thank you for your attention again.